as we made our way out to the area that we designated as the training grounds for magic, slowly following Sylvia as she remained silent, which quite frankly made the whole event seem very intimidating. I looked to see what Alice and Eliza were doing. Eliza seemed to be fairly worried, which fit, since I was fairly worried about the situation myself. But as I looked over to Alice, I found that she was simply staring at her arm as she walked, looking at the markings that had suddenly emerged on her skin, completely consumed with staring at them. There are three, just three people, standing between me and my destiny, Alice said to herself, staring at the marks on her arm. They won't stop me. They'll surrender their pieces of the maiden, or I'll take them. It doesn't matter which. If they stand in the way of my destiny, I'll kill them. They'll beg for something as sweet as a werewolf. I'll haunt their nightmares until they give it to me, Alice said to herself as she was walking, with an absolutely savage expression on her face. If murderous intent had a look, that would most definitely be it. Quite frankly, the whole thing had me wondering what the other pieces were like. Were they all going to be as terrifying as Alice? I mean, really, 4 Alices? That is most assuredly a nightmare, I thought to myself, staring over at her as she mumbled to herself. All right, we're here, Sylvia said, stopping and, with a beckoning of her fingers, summoning a chair from nowhere, which she calmly took a seat in. Now, as for today's lesson, shall we call it? Quite frankly, it requires a discussion first and foremost. I'm going to need all 3 of you to pay very close attention. As it stands right now, all of you are weak. You're only the very beginning, the entry levels of magicians. Even at your best, your powers are lackluster. I could take all 3 of you by myself, and I'm only a B-class magician myself. If you have any hope of dealing with the problems that you're facing, you will need strength, and there's no telling when you'll need it. With so many different surmounting odds against you, you have little in the way of time, and yet you need the strength that time alone is meant to give you. And therein lie your problem. Time. You need to devote time to training in order to gain strength, but the more time you divert into training, the less time you have in your other practices, the things you need to accomplish. And even the time you spend training can easily be counterbalanced by the training and efforts of those that assail you in this world. So how to even the odds, to change the balance of power and shift things in our favor? After a considerable amount of thought into it, I have determined there is really only one effective way in which we can achieve this goal. Speed up the process of your development. Enhance your magical abilities in a much shorter range of time. It will not yield you the experience you get from training, but the magical power you gain from it will vastly outweigh what you get from the amount of time you would spend training in order to obtain it. The method that I'm about to suggest would massively reduce the amount of time you need training in order to reach a much higher level of magical capability. Ostensibly, it rounds out to about 1 week per minute. That is the effect of this event, shall we call it. Every minute you spend suffering through this will amount to 1 week of highly intensive magical training. Not in experience, but in the magical power you gain. But there is always a trade-off, of course. Nothing that yields results that powerful can be done without a price to be paid. As she said the words, everyone got dead serious. Could that really be done? Cut a week's worth of training into 1 minute? It sounds insane. Anything like that has to have a high price to pay. I thought to myself, clenching my fists as I stared at her. Well, Sylvia said, each and every one of you at this point must decide whether or not you are willing to undergo this process. I'm not going to sugarcoat it to make you feel better. The process I suggest is by all definitions cruel. Those in the dark magic faction would use this method to increase the power of those serving them. And I assure you, those subjected to it would often beg for death. Often at times they would have to be bound, locked in chains and straitjackets, tied with ropes. Leather and wooden bite pieces jammed into their mouths so they didn't bite off their own tongues. The agony that you will undergo in this process is absolutely absurd, overwhelming, insurmountable. To give you an idea, imagine what it would feel like if your blood boiled in your veins. Quite literally. The pain is overwhelming, and as such, it will be your choice when to begin and when to end. But I give you this warning, this notice. This process only works once. You will get no second chances. Once you decide the process comes to an end, that's it. It will never work again. Your body will adjust, adapt, build defenses to protect against it, and thus the process itself will become useless. But the longer you can bear the pain, the longer you can stomach the agony, the greater the yield you will receive in exchange. With this process, 30 minutes of undergoing it is equivalent to nearly 10 months of training. 10 months of bone-shattering, non-stop training. In as little as 30 minutes, you could catch up with your opponents by a year's worth of magical training. Nearly. It all depends on how long you can stomach the agony. I will not force this on any of you, as it was forced upon me. This is your choice. You can stick to your guns, continue your regular training, work hard, develop naturally, or you can take the shortcut, pay the toll, and gain the strength you need to achieve your goals at the cost of pain, Sylvia said, crossing one leg over the other, slowly taking a drag from her tobacco pipe. Still that emotionless stare on her face, just sitting in her chair, waiting for us to respond, waiting for our answer. To be honest, receiving that kind of power boost, it's a dream come true. Being able to stomach some pain would be all too worth it for the advancement. That is, if we could actually stomach it. She said that she'd stop the process if it was too much for us. That if we wanted to end it, it would. But that's the problem. It only works once. one time.